My name is Dalia, and I am the IBM WebSphere migration tooling team lead. I work on a team that whole job is to help users, Java developers, migrate from different environments. So we help them go from on-premise environments to the cloud, WebSphere Traditional to Liberty, and upgrade their Java SE on their Java applications. So we've always had tooling for migrating from Java 6 to 7, 7 to 8, and then with this new release cadence, we had to figure out what to do with Java 11 and beyond. So our team did a lot of work, read a lot of doc to figure out, okay, what came out in Java 11 that would break applications? And beyond that as well. So I'm going to share with you what we found out. The tooling that I'm going to be talking about is all free, so you can go out and download it and run it as you wish. And it's going to be all about things that are going to break your application. I'm not going to talk about new features or any of that good stuff, just because from my perspective, what I care about is when you go to run on Java 11, is your application going to break? And if it is going to break, then I care about that. Before I get started, I usually like to kind of understand where people are at with their Java development. So if you have a Java application already running on Java 13 or 12, can you raise your hand? Ooh, okay, some brave folks, that's great. Java 11? All right, a few, that's awesome. So let me know how that went for you. 9 or 10? Okay. 8. Awesome, all right. Anyone running on Java 7? Okay, I'm surprised you're so like up there. Java 6? Good for you. Some people don't like to admit it, but I have a lot of users that still run on Java 6, and they always wonder, can I still run the tools? And I say, yes, you can. It'll be interesting going from Java 6 to 11, but you can sure try it and see how it goes. Okay, so let's get started here. I like to kind of give you a preview of what we're going to be talking about here. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background so everyone is all on the same page. I'm going to describe a little bit about the general migration concerns you're going to be seeing when you're migrating your application. And then I'm going to dive into details on what changed coming from Java 8 to 11. And then I'll talk about 11 to 13. And it'll make sense why I broke it up this way in a bit. And then I'll talk to you about tooling. So the tools that my team works on, which is the application binary scanner tool and the application source scanner tool, and then I'll talk about Ideps. And Ideps is a tool that gets shipped in the JDK, so I'll talk about that as well. Okay, so a little bit of background. If you look at the current timeline, you'll see that back in 2011, we got Java 11. And it was there for a while, and it was there for 3 years until we got Java 8. And Java 8 came out in 2014, so if you guys were maybe migrating your applications, then you would be waiting 3 years, and then Java 8 came out, and then you did your migrations. But then Oracle announced that there is a new release cadence that is coming out, and we saw that with Java 9. So in September of 2017, we saw that Java 9 came out. The difference is you got 6 months of support if you're on Java 9. And as soon as Java 10 came out, Java 9 went out of support in March of 2018. Then came Java 11. And Java 11 was designated a long-term supported release. What that means is you don't need to upgrade after 6 months for this version. Then we saw that Java 12 came out in March 2019, and it went out of support right when Java 13 came out in September of 2019. The reason I show this is because I want you to realize that if you decide to migrate to Java 12, 13, 14, you're committing to upgrading your Java every 6 months If you're okay with that and you have your systems all in check, that's great. But when I talk to developers, they want to wait as long as possible. They want to stay on the current version as long as possible. So I usually focus on going from Java 8 to Java 11 because I live in the enterprise world and people like their environments to be as stable as possible. And looking at the future, you'll see that, we got Java 11, 12, 13, 14 is going to be coming out. You'll see 15 coming out, 16, and then Java 17 is going to be the next long-term supported release. The reason I show this is because I see a lot of people online saying, I'm on Java 8, and we're already on 13, and then we're going to be seeing 14, and then 15, and people are like, I can't keep up with this. Well, you don't have to keep up with this. If you want to keep going the way that you've been doing your business, you can go from 8 to 11, and then 11 to 17. So my advice is run LTS in production, but test with non-LTS. So if you have a CI/CD pipeline, just continue testing with all those Java versions that are coming out. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. If there's a bug or something breaks your application, then you get a chance to actually fix it instead of waiting 3 years and then discovering all the problems that came in. New features. Lots of cool new features and why you should migrate. So I pasted like all the different releases, new features. It's really cool. Some of the favorites of mine is var, of course, and some helper classes and collections. Helper method and collection classes, mainly because I like my code concise, and they added really nice methods in there. But this is all fun and great, but that's about it for talking about new features. I care about features that were taken out and features that might break your application. So speaking of modularity, anyone here not familiar with modularity? Just in case. So Java wanted to be able to divide its JDK into different modules that contain different packages. And each application would declare the dependency on the module that it needs. It really helps with space and memory and all that good stuff if you're running in containers. Now, the issue is, if you are running on Java 8, you have no concept of modularity. And if modularity is on by default, then when you go to Java 8, things are just going to start breaking. Luckily, there is a kill switch, and the kill switch is on by default, and it's the illegal access property, and it's set to permit. That's on. I advise keep it on. Don't switch it on until you've actually migrated to Java 11, and you've taken care of all the other issues. And then when you're ready, you can turn it on and figure out how you're going to break up your application into modules. So don't feel like you need to use modularity right away. Just move to Java 11, no modularity, and then think about how you want to break up your application. So the general migration concerns that I've seen while reading all this doc is there was a lot of packages that got removed, a lot of classes got removed and methods. Some of these packages were deprecated since like 1.1 even. So you had plenty of time to change them and switch them out. But some of them are strategic. Some of them are packages that you might still be using and want to still use. In that case, you want to package up those, you want to include those packages in your application, or rely on your application server to provide them. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. There's always minor behavior changes that go from one Java version to another. If you've ever migrated, you might have noticed a slight change. That's why my team even exists, because customers go from 6 to 7, they notice there are problems, and then we need to be catching that before they start the actual migration. Your application dependencies may need to be updated. So for us, we use ASM. So we needed to update to an ASM version that was Java 11 compliant. So for us, I think it was ASM 7. Okay, so let's dive really deep into what changed from 8 to 11. First off, there's a few security classes that got removed. A bunch of them are Solaris related, and a bunch of them are just in the security packages. They've been deprecated since 1.4. So if you're still using them, now you have to actually switch it. What does that look like? I like visuals. So in your IDE, you would have been using one of these classes. You would have seen the warning and just kind of ignored it because it still works. But once you switch to Java 11, it's no longer there. You're just going to have a breaking change in your application. What do? You just basically find replace all with the Unix equivalent of the Solaris class. So if you have any of these Solaris classes, you're going to be replacing them with Unix. There were a few AWT APIs that got removed, AWT peer packages. When I was doing some research, I found that this call is pretty popular. And you might be looking at it and thinking, okay, this is a method, it's not a class. Well, the method returns a class that got removed. So you would have gotten warning and then an error because the type that's getting returned got removed. You just replace it with button is displayable to get the same functionality you would have gotten it before. Some DOM classes got removed as well. And image codec JPEG package got removed. Use Java image IO instead. And the internal bindings package got removed. If you're using any internal classes from Java, you're going to have issues when you go to Java 11 in general. So Oracle always says, well, you shouldn't be using internal classes, but we all know if it's there, sometimes you just use it. Oh, all right. So this was a bigger hitter for us on the application server side. And even if you're not running within an application server, this is going to impact you as well. So all the Java EE modules got removed from the JDK. And what that looks like is if you have an activation module, if you're using Corba, anyone using Corba? Oh, 1. All right, 2. Okay. And then transaction, bindings, anyone using JAX-B? All right, a few people. Yep. JAX-WS, using JAX-WS. Cool. All right, a few people. Annotation. And what that looks like is if you're using any class in any of these packages, you can no longer rely on the JDK to provide it. For us, the biggest hitter from a Webster perspective was the JAX-B one, because we were using a lot of JAX-B libraries and we could see kind of a lot of people's hands went up because some people are using JAX-B just outside of even an application server. All right, 2 options for anything in this list for Java EE modules. You can either just package up the dependencies within your application because you can no longer rely on the JDK to provide them, or you can rely on your application server to provide them. So if you're using OpenLiberty, for example, what we ended up doing is we ended up shipping off those packages and having them available if you're running OpenLiberty with Java 11 or after that. That way, the migration is pretty seamless because we did a lot of talking internally and we're thinking, okay, this is going to be pretty disruptive. Well, if you enable certain features that use JAX-B, then you're going to get those packages without having to put it in your own application. And I included a blog link here with what we had to do in OpenLiberty to get it Java 11 and beyond compliant. All right, so classes, packages, all good. There were also a bunch of methods that got removed. So if you see this and it's a big list, it's just the security manager got a lot of its check access methods removed. So you would have gotten a warning, of course, and ignored it. And now it's gone. Instead of doing this, use the check permission method. In Java language thread, you can no longer call destroy, and you can no longer call stop with an argument. Stop with no argument is deprecated. I suspect it's probably going to go away soon, but you can no longer do either of these. In the run class, we got the get localized input and output stream methods got removed, and the run finalizer zone exit got removed in the runtime class and in the system class. So I wanted to kind of paste a bug in the spirit of all these cleanup methods getting removed. Finalizers are inherently problematic, and their use can lead to performance issues, deadlocks, hangs, and other problematic behavior. So Java's really wanting to encourage Java developers to be cleaning up their resources in a better way. So they remove these methods. So if you find that your application is using any of these methods, just think about how you're cleaning up your resources and take this chance to really clean up your code. Log manager methods. So you have the add property change listener, remove property change listener got removed. Instead, you can override the read configuration method and use the global log manager to do the same functionality here. The packer and unpacker class had the change listeners also got removed in there. And in that case, you can use the progress property and just pull it for updates. All right. So other general changes. Java Web Start got removed from the JDK. I was talking to Oleg Nanchov, and I'm blanking on the name, Garrett Grunwald, and they were telling me about Open Web Start, which is now available for anyone that's using Web Start. So now you don't need to worry about switching to JLink. You can just use Open Web Start, and included the link here. JavaFX, if you're using JavaFX, and Garrett did a really nice job with his presentation on desktop applications. You can still use JavaFX. You're just going to have to bring it in, just like Web Start, into your application. Other removals, a lot of the internal APIs got removed. You shouldn't be calling these, but they are going to be gone now, so you can't call them anymore. Like the base64 encoder and decoder. Add JDK exported annotation got removed. Some of you might wonder what that is. It's just an attempt at modularity, and it's gone now. And now you can use the actual official way of declaring modules. NetDoc protocol handler got removed, so you're going to get a malformed URL exception if you try to use it. Some behavior changes, just like always. So these two methods, they return a different exception in an error case than they did before. So it's probably not going to impact your application, but I'd like to kind of give you an example of the kind of updates that come. But if you have a catch that's looking for a specific exception and now it's a different exception, it might impact you. And there's more. There's pages and pages and pages. But I highlighted the things that I thought were the most impactful from an application perspective. Okay. I say I recommend going to Java 11, but I know certain people want to stay on the latest releases. So I'll talk about Java 12 and 13. As far as Java 12 is concerned, we got a bunch of the finalized methods got removed. And I think that was a problem for the Jenkins team. So in that case, if you're calling finalize, use the try with resources instead. It's a lot cleaner, and after your try block is finished executing, then your resources are going to get cleaned up already. So kind of like I said, review how you're cleaning up your resources, make sure you're doing it properly. The security warning class got removed. It's probably not going to impact you too much. And the user time zone system property may return null now instead of empty. So I just like to highlight that in case you're trying to avoid the null pointer exception. Maybe, I don't think this is going to impact you too much either. And then load from XML again, a method that returns a different exception now than it did before. I'll link to the Java 12 migration guide instead of if you're curious about any of these. Java 13. The list is super short just because it's 6 months. So you saw the trace instructions and trace method calls methods got removed. The AWT toolkit system property is also removed in case you're using that, and I linked the Java 13 migration guide. Okay, so you're sitting here, you all have Java 8 applications, and you're curious what to do when you're going to Java 11 and after. You don't want to be copying all the methods that I mentioned in the classes and finding it all in your application. It's not very efficient. And that's why our team works really hard to have people, to save people that time. So let's start with the first tool that my team works on. So this is the binary scanner tool. It's, again, it's available for free on this page. We have a quarterly release cycle. And why do I mention that? Because Java 13 came out last month, and we had already shipped our release. So right now, we don't have an option for Java 13. But you can still use the Java 12 option. You'll get almost everything except those 2 methods that I mentioned. So if you were wanting to go to Java 13, still use the Java 12 option. It's just going to be missing 2 methods. What does it do? So it's going to look at your application. It's going to scan it for a variety of issues. So we call them migration rules. We're going to have different cases. So it's going to scan for problems coming from even back to Java 5, Java 6, 7, 8, not 9. We're going to skip 9 and 10 and 11. So you can do 8 to 11, 8 to 12, and then hopefully soon 13. There's also other scenarios this tool is looking for, and I only mentioned that because some people might think, oh, is this it? No, there's like a whole bunch of rules, and this is a small portion of what the tool is looking for. So it helps people for going from on-premise to cloud. It looks for like database calls, and it tells you, oh, you're making a database call. Well, you need to really review that when you go to the cloud, things like that. And it's also looking for WebSphere tradition to Liberty, because we're helping our WebSphere traditional customers go to Liberty. It scans your application, and after it's all done, it's going to produce this migration report. And the migration report is going to tell you all the things it found in your application that are going to be problematic. And it's going to include a lot of help, a lot of links. The help actually takes longer for our team to write than the actual rule, just because we really want to give you the best advice, and that way you have the resources you need when you're actually trying to migrate. So what is it? It's just a jar. You can run it on Java 6 or later. It used to say Java 7 or later, and then I got a special request, can you please get it running on Java 6? And we made that happen. It took a little bit of work. And the way that it works is that you specify different options when you're running the command, and you tell the binary scanner what you want it to be looking for. So if you say -- analyze Java SE, it's going to know that I need to be looking for those Java SE issues. There's 2 things that you want to specify next to that option. You want to tell me what source Java you're coming from. So these are all the options we have. So for you, it'd be probably between IBM 8 and Oracle 8. But for the folks that are running 6, the 6s are in here too. And then you're telling me what the target is going to be. So Java 11 and 12, and hopefully 13 soon. And if you're curious how the other options work, you can use the help command and read about them a little bit more. The jar is going to accept a location to your ear or WAR file, or you can put in a jar file. I get this question all the time. They say, do I have to have an application server? Can I just run this on a jar? Yes. Because all we're doing is we're using ASM, if anyone familiar with ASM? Awesome. So we're using ASM to scan your bytecode and look for those specific class calls or method calls that are going to be problematic when you move. So you don't need to be running in an application server. If you have a jar file, a war file, an e-file, you can just scan it. By default, we do exclude third-party packages. And the reason we do that is because if I highlight a problem that's in a third-party package, it doesn't help you any because you can't change the code. So by default, we try to have kind of a package list that we exclude for. But sometimes maybe your company uses one of these names. So you want to review that. You know, we're excluding org, we're excluding Java, we're excluding COB, IBM, all these. If your company is using one of these packages, then you can override the default by using the -- include packages or -- exclude packages option and specify the package that your company actually uses in the include packages case. Most likely it's not going to impact you, but I do like to highlight this just in case you do happen to be using packages that start with any of these. After it's all done, it's going to generate an HTML report. If you want, you can also get a JSON report, and you can do that by specifying -- format equal JSON. There's a lot of other options in here. There's a few reports that we generate. We have like an inventory report. It looks at your application, and it only works for war and ear files. But it's going to look at your application and see if you include any dependency jars and if you're not using those jars, for example. So some users like to have a war and just shove a bunch of libraries in there and never use them. So this report was really useful for them. We have other reports that are useful, and they're more related to WebSphere. But for you guys, I think the most important thing or the most important report is the analysis report, and that's why I'm going to demo it here today. And a link to the documentation, because I know people like to search through it. We do have multi-language support. So we support any of these languages here for the binary scanner, and I did want to highlight the Russian. So all you're going to need to do is start the binary scanner and specify the -d user language option and set it to RU, or any of the other languages if you're interested in that. Okay, so let's jump to the demo. All right, so I like to start with where to get the tool. So for the binary scanner, I included the link on the slides, and I uploaded the slides already, so you can definitely access it. But you come over here, and it includes information about all the different reports we're generating. The one you really care about is the detailed migration analysis report. And then at the bottom, there's the links to the documentations, videos, all the other stuff that you might be interested in with it. So you come over here, you just download. And when you need downloads, oops, it's not the right place. Let's go. It's gonna download a binary app scanner installer jar. And all you need to do to install it is go to command line. This one was open to the right spot. Java-jar, just like always. Binary app scanner installer jar. It's gonna give you some license information. You can read it. I'm gonna skip it for now. And it's gonna ask you, do you agree or disagree? You can exit out if you don't. And then it's gonna ask you, where do you wanna install the files? I'm gonna take the default, so I'm just gonna click enter. And now it's all installed. I get asked, why do you go through this? It's because some people get intimidated when we're talking tools, and they say it's gonna take me forever to figure out how to download it. It's really simple, so I like to show this off when I'm doing a demo. So all I need to do is just go to my directory where the tool is now installed. Okay, so let's get some scanning done. I have these two files here that I want to scan, a jar file and a war file. And I want to, let's clear this up. I want to have the binary scanner scan my, let's do jar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the binary scanner. And then I'm going to tell it which application I want to scan. And then, like I said, you want to specify the option that tells me that I need to be looking for just Java SE problems. So analyze Java SE. Next, you want to tell me where you're coming from. So source Java is, let's say, Oracle 8. Or you can do IBM 6, or you can do whatever you'd like. So I'm going to say Oracle 8. And then you're going to tell me what your target is. Target Java is Java 11 or 12. If you're going to 12 or 13, you can use the 12 option. But, like I said, I like Java 11, so I'm going to show that off. All right. So it ran really fast, and it ran really fast because my application is super duper tiny, but yours is probably going to be a bigger one. So it might sit here and do ... until it's done. It just depends on how big your application is. I want to show you what got printed out here. So I added this message because I wanted it to be very clear that we're excluding packages by default. So again, you want to look at your application, make sure it's not using one of these package names, but most likely it's not, just in case you want to look at that. And then it's going to tell me, I ran the scan, I'm done with the scan, and here's where you can find the HTML report. It also auto opens it up in the browser. That's what came up really quick. So here's the report. So I ran the scan, and I found 4 problems with 7 hits. So let's see what that means. So we have 3 categories here. We have severe issues, warnings, and informational. Severe means your application is going to break. If I see that you're using one of those classes or methods that I talked about that got removed that are just going to be a really big problem, I'm going to give you a severe hit. Warnings means it's probably going to be a problem. You should look at it and make sure you're evaluating what it's telling you. Informational is more of like, might be a problem. You can probably safely ignore it. We like to include informational stuff here so that if you run the application breaks, there's something in your mind like, oh, I saw that in the report. Maybe that's the problem. So sometimes it's just not really something that's going to be a problem, but maybe you want to be aware of it. Okay, so what did we find? So I have this application, and I found the first hit was this rule called do not use APIs from Sun packages. So you might look at this and think, I'm not really sure what that means. You look at the rule help, it'll tell you. So it'll tell you that the Sun packages are not supported, internal packages got removed, and it'll give you some links to some doc. So it talks about base 64 encoder, base 64 decoder, and all the other internal classes that got removed. And if you're curious where the lines in the code is that you made that call, you can click open results, and it'll show you in my test encoder class, in my test encoder method, I'm calling one of these APIs on line 7. All right, next hit. Do not use the security manager removed methods. It's kind of self-explanatory, but if you open up the help, we'll tell you these check access methods got removed. So if you're remembering what I just talked about with things that got removed, all of these are in this report. So you only need to care about the problems that show up in the report. Otherwise, if it doesn't show up, it's probably not going to be an issue that you need to do research on. And then some resources here. You can look at the line. So it looks like line 7 calls git incheck. And next are warnings. So it looks like I found a binding and an activation module being used. Some might ask, why is it just a warning? It's because once you fix it once and include it in your application, it's no longer a problem. So I didn't want to kind of make the report too noisy. And maybe you already took care of it. So it's just a warning here. And if you want more information, it's right here. We tell you what to enable in Liberty if you want the in Open Liberty to get all the different packages that got removed by including that feature. And then lastly, we tell you run JDEPs. I'm going to talk about JDEPs in a little bit, but I do want to point out that the binary scanner will tell you to run JDEPs when it's appropriate, when we see that there is an internal class that's being used. And that's about all. At the bottom here, we just give you a list of all the rules that we ran. So that is the binary scanner. Let's take a look here. Switch back. Oh, Russian. Yeah, I want to show that. So, okay. So I'm on a Windows machine, and don't judge me for it. But for me, I need to run special commands in order to get Russian to show up correctly. So I have to do chcp 866. And then once I do that, I run the binary scanner with the appropriate options. I also have to add an extra one for my machine. My colleague is running a Mac, and it just worked great for him, and I was a little bit jealous when he did, but at least I'm doing testing for the Windows machine, so that's good. If you're on a Mac, you might not need to do any of this. But you do want to say user language is RU, and then file.encoding equal UTF-8. That's I think that's something I needed to do on Windows that Mac users don't need to do. And once you do this, oh, I put it in the wrong spot. That's live demos for you, right? All right, so I'm gonna highlight this. And I often do this actually, just mix the two. So you want to do it right when you do -jar. Let's try this out. Oh, let's go back. So the output was in Russian. I hope it's a good translation here. And then the report is also going to be in Russian. So you can take a look and look at the help files in here. And if you have any, if you run into any problems, please let me know. I just unfortunately don't read Russian, so I wouldn't know, but our translation team does a wonderful job with all our translations. Okay, so that's the binary scanner. We also have an application source scanner. Anyone here using Eclipse? All right. Great, I'm happy. So, I mean, if you're not using Eclipse, you can always use the binary scanner, or you can just import your project into Eclipse, run the tool, and fix it over there, and then, you know, do your thing in your IntelliJ or VS Code or whatever. I do get asked, why don't you have this in not Eclipse? And we're looking into it. But anyways, so I do want to show you what it does, just because it's a little bit interesting. So you can get it from Eclipse Marketplace or the download website here. And there's a bunch of installation steps, just like any other Eclipse plugin. It runs in Oxygen or after. Sometimes people are running older versions of Eclipse, and I tell them you need to just upgrade. And the difference between the binary scanner and the source scanner is that it's running against your source code instead of your binary code. So in the source code version, what's nice is that it's right there in Eclipse, and you can just make your updates in Eclipse. So it's looking for, you know, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, same scenarios as a binary scanner, same rules, but now it's in Eclipse. How it works is once you install the Eclipse plugin, you're gonna have a new option under your Run menu called Analysis. Click on that, and you're gonna select the project that you're gonna scan, and I'm gonna show that in a few minutes. You're gonna tell me where you're coming from, where you're going to, just like you did in the binary scanner. And then it's gonna produce a list of all the hits for the issues that it found when it looked at your source code. And then you can look at the help within Eclipse as well. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so I have my Eclipse environment here. I have my application imported into Eclipse, and I've already downloaded the plugin and installed it because I didn't want it to take a little bit longer than the binary scanner. I click Run. I see this new analysis option. Right-click on Software Analyzer and create a new configuration. Let's name it something meaningful. So we're going to say I'm going Java 8 to Java 11. And then I'm going to choose which project I want to scan. So I'm going to scan my application. Switch to rules. Like I said, that's what we call the different problems that you have. WebSphere application server version migration. Again, you don't have to be running WebSphere, but if you are, you can definitely change this. But if you're not running WebSphere, you can keep it as I'm coming and going to the same things, so don't highlight anything application server related. And then you're going to tell me what your source Java is. So these are the options. You can choose any of those. This time I'll choose IBM Java 8. And I'm going to look at all the options here. So Java 11 or Java 12. I'm going to click OK. And what it's doing in the background is it's going to select the specific rules that are related to the problem that you specify. So you said you're coming from 8 and you're going to 11. And under Java SC version migration, you're going to see, you don't have to do this, but I do like to show it in case you're curious what rules we're looking at. So it'll show you all the list of rules that are related to the issues that we talked about. So, do not use the get peer method that I talked about during the presentation, if you remember that. And then if you want to learn more about it, you can always click on that question mark over here and detailed help. And I'll give you the same help that you would get in the binary scanner, and now it's in Eclipse. But say you don't want to read any of this, you just want to analyze, so you're just going to click Analyze. Mine took like really short time, but yours is going to take longer because it's going to be a real application. It's going to take longer. So it comes up with some results here on the bottom. So you want to review all your tabs. In this case, no file issues, but I do have some code that needs to be changed. And the same hits. So if you were paying attention to the binary scanner, you'll notice it's the same issues that it found in the other one. So do not use API from the Sun package. This time it's nice because you can double click and it will show you exactly the file that you have issues with, and you can just edit it here, fix it up, and then run the scan again. If you're wanting to see the help, you can open the help view and you can access it after you run your scan right here. And then, it's really nice when you're actually calling methods and all that stuff. So that's the source scanner. Like, again, if you're not using Eclipse, use a binary scanner or use Eclipse a little bit. I think you can survive that and then switch back. But definitely you can use either of those and you'll get the same results. All right. JDEPs. So JDEPs is a tool that's shipped in the JDK. So if you have Java 8 or later, you're going to see that JDEPs is available for you. And there are multiple options you can specify with JDEPs. The one that is most relevant to people that are migrating is dash JDK internals. And it also scans class files, and it scans jar files and directories. I couldn't get it to scan my ear, so I just need to expand my classes within that ear and put it in a directory and scan that. The binary scanner and the source scanner will tell you if you need to run JDEPs. The reason I did it this way is because I ran JDeps against my app that was using Java EE modules, and it didn't find the problem. And I was thinking, well, that's not really very useful. So what I wanted to do is, let's have the people go run the binary scanner, and if it finds any internal classes, then you can go off and run JDeps. A lot of times the binary scanner already tells you what the problem is, but sometimes JDeps will give you a little bit more information. So I did want to include it as an option for you in the report. Some limitations when I was doing my research is that it didn't find a lot of the things that were problematic according to the compatibility guide. There was no method flagging either. And it's very Java version dependent. So if you're coming from Java 8 and you're going to Java 11, run the JDeps that's within Java 11 or Java 12 or Java 13. Run it within the Java version that you're migrating to, because that's the Java version that knows that information about the things that happened before Java 11. And a link to the documentation. Actually, do we have time? I think we have time. Let me show you what JDeps is going to do. Okay. So I have a directory here. And like I said, I had to pull out the classes within the year file for me. And I put it in a directory here. And make sure you're running with Java 11. So I'm going to run JDeps, JDK internals, I think with an S. And then I'm going to tell it which files to scan. So it's going to be this directory. And then it's going to spit this out. Part of the problem I had was I looked at this for a sec, and I wasn't sure where to look. So it wasn't very human readable to me. But maybe you see it and you know what it's saying. But it's basically saying in your test encoder class, you're using base 64 encoder. It's a JDK internal API. And then down below it tells you, if you're using base 64 encoder, use Java util base 64. You notice that the binary scanner already told you this, but maybe there's more information that came out between versions, and you want to run it anyways, and you want to get all the information you can get before you migrate. So you can definitely run that. Okay, so you sat here, and thank you for your patience. But what do you do when you leave? What I want you to do is download the binary scanner, and if you're on Eclipse, download the Eclipse plugin. I showed you how easy it is to install it. Just run the install command. And I included the command to run the binary scanner, telling it you're coming from 8 and 11. That way you can just copy paste. And you're going to tell it what application you want it to scan. And there's also help commands for you. And then you're going to review the report. So you're going to look through each issue. It's going to highlight and all the help files and all the hits. And you're going to fix that up. And after you resolve them all, you can run them on Java 11 and see if it runs. Optionally, I would love to know if it found the things that you actually had issues with when you switched to Java 11. So if you run the tools and it ends up not finding anything, please let me know. That's how we keep improving the tools, is that people come to me and tell me, by the way, I actually went and ran it, and it didn't find this problem, so we add the tools. So if you do end up running it, here's my Twitter handle. I'd love to hear about if it helped you or didn't. And finally, if you're looking for a free Java 11 build, check out Adopt OpenJDK. That's how I'm running with Java 11. I have OpenJDK 11 on OpenJ9, and I included a link here. And some resources. So I do have a blog with written instructions on what I just went through in my demo. I have a video of how to run the source scanner. One of my colleagues did a really nice job just walking you through the things that I did in the Eclipse plugin. And then we have full links to the binary scanner, source scanner, the roadmap for Oracle Java. And if you're going from Oracle Java and you want to go to adopt OpenJDK, there is an article here that I found pretty useful. And then finally, some information about how we did it in Open Liberty, how we migrated to Java 11. All right, any questions? And I think we have 10 minutes for that.
Thank you very much. Keeping up to date with Java is, of course, a great thing, but it requires some resources. And could you please share if there are any like rationales that can be understood by management that it's worth like doing?
Oh, yeah. I was at a presentation recently and they said accountants kill more projects than any other group. So I completely understand that sentiment. So honestly speaking, I tell people you can stay on Java 8. Of course, from a developer perspective, maybe you want to use some of those new features and you want to switch. So it is fine to stay on Java 8. That said, when you talk Java 11, you're always getting performance enhancements when you switch Java versions. You might want to start looking on modularity because that switch for modularity is not going to be around forever. You want to tell management it's going to help you once 3 years hits the mark and it's 17. Maybe in 17 they take out that option. So you want to prepare for all those different things that are going to come out, and you want to be doing it as soon as you can. Of course, there's all the new features. TLS 1.3 is a big one. So that's security related. That's a good management-y thing to bring up is, you know, we need to switch to TLS 1.3. But that's basically kind of the arguments people use. They don't really talk about modularity much just because it's not really picking up. But they talk about the other things like performance enhancements and so on.
So you have a Java tool. Do you package it somehow, for example, as a Maven plugin, as a Gradle plugin, or maybe as Docker image, just to simplify its usage?
Great question. So I had a colleague sitting in one of my presentations and was like, why do you just go out and download it from a website? Why can't you include it like that? We haven't done it yet, but now I have a feature request. I'll put it on our backlog.
Thank you. Yeah. And question about the tool itself. So it discovers a lot of API usages from newer versions, but does it discover usages of reflection API? So for example, if I invoke methods in the reflection due to whatever reason, would the tool discover them?
Oh, that's a good question. My suspicion is no, if ASM isn't going to recognize it. I would think that we need to do special logic in the tool to get it to recognize removed calls within a reflection class. And I got that question actually from someone else. So I think when I get back, I'd like to do some research and see if we can get it working with ASM reflection calls as well. So that's a really good point.
Okay, since there is no other questions, what about multi-release jars? Is the tool able to analyze them properly?
No. We're assuming you're not using multi-release jars, but we'll probably have to change that soon. It will not recognize that at the time. Another feature request for my backlog. You're just adding 3. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
A couple questions here. Yeah.
Okay.
What is the end user's license of your application? Is it free for commercial use?
Yes.
Thanks you very much.
Thank you, Dalia, for your talk. And the question is the covering my code and the changes I need to make to move to another version of Java is half of the problem. What about the third parties? I have a trillion of third parties in my project, and what should I do?
Short answer is you should stay with Java 8 until they come out. So I went to a talk during EclipseCon about someone that was from Oracle talking about updating, every release. And I was thinking, well, I know a lot of the tooling can't keep up. We can't even keep up. That's why I brought up the quarterly release cycle that we have. And that is a real problem, is a lot of the dependency jars just can't update that fast. And that's one of the reasons why you want to stick with the long-term supported releases. And there is no rush to switch to Java 11 right now. You might want to just be watching your third-party libraries and seeing if they come out with Java 11 compatible versions. It's regularly getting updated. I see a lot of the third-party libraries saying, all right, now it's compatible with Java 11. Now it's compatible with Java 11. Now they don't say that about 13 or 14, but at least they're trying to get it working on Java 11. So keep an eye out. If it's a big problem, just wait it out a little bit longer and see if that works for you.
Hi, thank you very much for your great tool. And the application usually consists of several jars, not the one jar. And what is the best way to run your tool? Should I run it one by one, or there is another way?
That's a great question. So we have one of my customers has like 100 jars, and that's kind of how they've decided to have their application. We also accept directories. So if you put all those jars in one directory, if they're all in one directory, you can point the tool to that directory, and it's going to produce a report for each of the applications. It might be doing combined, I can't remember. I think we changed it recently. But you can definitely specify a directory, and it's going to go through each file in that directory that's a jar and scan it. And let me know if you have any issues with that. Yep.
Отлично. Если у кого-то еще есть вопросы, у нас есть пара минут, можете поднимать руки. Если нет...
In addition to Sun and IBM virtual machines, there is some exotic virtual machine like Android or Graal VM that has additional restrictions like a problem with dynamic proxies and so on. I'm interested if there are plans to develop profiles for these virtual machines so they could be also checked if library is Android compatible or Graal VM compatible.
I think that would be useful. Right now, it's not a focus for us, but I think that would be probably a future plan for different tooling. That's a good point.
This would be very useful to check several such profiles if we are building a library in Maven, and so it could be periodically checked if it's still compatible with other runtimes.
Yep. I agree. That would be very useful.
Hi, can you give a super quick overview of how your application works, and do you use pattern matching or something more complicated, and do you detect dependencies which are not compatible with Java 11?
So you're talking how the actual tool is detecting? Okay, so yeah, so we have a lot of regex in our tool. We're looking for like this package name and anything inside of that package. So a lot of the Java EE modules, we're looking at, all right, show me everything that's using these package names. And then for methods, we do special logic underneath the covers for any class that's using this specific method. And a lot of it is ASM does that, but in the Eclipse plugin it's quite interesting how you grab the method call, and sometimes we even have quick fixes. So it sees the method and it replaces it with something else. I can definitely go into a lot of details on that after the talk, but I think that's a great question. Yeah, I'll leave it at that because there's a lot of implementation detail, but a lot of it is like, let's look for the string literal, or let's look for anything .star on that package, or so on and so forth.